All right, so this is musicians or composers and works, numbers 1 through 15 in the list from my study guide, 33 toss-ups. So toss-up number 1. In the first scene of this opera, a female character announces her love for the title character in the aria, "If Only I Were Already United with Thee." In another scene, prisoners sing the chorus, "Farewell, Warm Sunshine," as they are being returned to their cells. Notable musical works in this opera include the Canon Quartet and the Grave-Digging Duet. In the final scene of this opera, the title character saves her husband Florestan from being killed by threatening to shoot Don Pizarro. Originally, overtures for this opera were titled Lenore. For 10 points, name this only opera by Ludwig van Beethoven. That is Fidelio. Toss-up number 2. He wrote a string quartet in E-flat that derives its name from the starting and stopping at the end of its rondo finale, so that listeners don't realize when the piece actually finishes. In addition to the string quartet, The Joke, he wrote a choral work whose overture depicts chaos. That piece also features a sudden C major chord on the words, "And there was light." In one of his symphonies, a quiet C major theme is punctuated by a sudden fortissimo chord in the whole orchestra, including timpani. For 10 points, name this Austrian composer of The Creation and Surprise Symphony, sometimes called the father of the symphony. And that is Haydn. Toss-up 3. In the Vienna production of this opera, the aria, "Per queste tue manine," is added to a low comedy scene where a woman threatens a servant with a razor. That woman sings the aria, "La ci darim la mano," with the protagonist. In addition to trying to woo Zerlina, the protagonist organizes a party in his champagne aria. In the catalog aria, the servant Leporello recounts the romantic conquests of his master. That titular character is dragged to hell by a statue of the Commendatore at the end of this opera. For 10 points, name this opera written by Mozart about the title Spanish Womanizer. That is Don Giovanni. Toss-up 4. In one work by this composer, Ninetta hopes to marry Gianetto, but is falsely accused of stealing a spoon. The evil governor Gessler appears in one work by this man, while another work sees a man assume the name Lindoro and includes the arias Largo al Factotum and Una voce poco fa. In addition to The Thieving Magpie, this man composed an opera in which Count Almaviva hopes to earn the love of Rosina. In another of his operas, the title character shoots an apple off of Jimmy's head. For 10 points, name this Italian composer of such operas as The Barber of Seville and William Tell. That is Rossini. Toss-up 5. This work's 3-part structure inspired another in the same genre by Michael Tippett, but many performances include only the first part and the finale of the second. And an aria of this work repeatedly accentuates the word incorruptible incorrectly, and that aria is "The Trumpet Shall Sound." One movement follows a Pifa interlude, while another declares that this work's subject was despised and rejected. King George II supposedly rose from his seat while the words "He shall reign forever and ever" were sung during this work's Hallelujah Chorus. For 10 points, name this oratorio commonly performed at Christmas by George Friedrich Handel. And that is Messiah. Toss-up 6. One of this composer's works has been performed at every British coronation ceremony since its composition. In addition to the anthem Zadok the Priest, he wrote a piece with movements titled La Paix, or La Paix, and La Renaissance. Another orchestral work features a hornpipe movement in its D major second suite. The line, "And he shall reign forever and ever," forms a fugue movement of one of his oratorios, and one of his pieces is so titled because it was originally performed on a royal barge on the River Thames. For 10 points, name this German-born Baroque composer of music for the Royal Fireworks, Water Music, and Messiah, known for its Hallelujah Chorus. And that is Handel. Toss-up 3. This piece's second movement was played by the Boston Symphony Orchestra when it was announced that JFK was assassinated. This piece includes a solo horn that enters 4 bars before the true recapitulation. The final movement of this symphony adapted its main theme from its composer's music, The Creatures of Prometheus. A funeral march is present in the second movement of this symphony, which opens with 2 tutti chords in E-flat and had its original dedication to Napoleon revised. For 10 points, name this symphony by Beethoven dedicated to the memory of a great man. And that is Beethoven's third, also known as Eroica, the Eroica Symphony. Toss-up number 8. In one work by this composer, one central character's recitatives are usually accompanied by sustained strings, an effect known as that character's halo. That work opens with the double chorus Kommt ihr Tochter. A piece by this composer that serves as the basis for Charles Gounod's Ave Maria appears in his collection of preludes and fugues in every major and minor key. Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, is a movement from one of his 209 cantatas, and a G major aria serves as the basis for 30 variations in one harpsichord work. For 10 points, name this German Baroque composer of the St. Matthew Passion, the Well-Tempered Clavier, and the Goldberg Variations. And that would be J.S. Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. Toss-up number 9. The organ concerto was incidentally invented as an interlude for longer compositions in this genre. 2 oboes and strings play a lively symphonia, which begin the third section of a composition in this genre. It is followed by From Arabia's Spicy Shores. The first section of another of these works features a C major pastoral in 12/8 time, which takes its name from bagpipers called Pifferi. The tunes Dead March and Arrival of the Queen of Sheba originated in 2 of these works with libretti by Charles Jennens titled Saul and Solomon, respectively. It is traditional to stand during a chorus from another of these works, which repeats, and he shall reign forever and ever. For 10 points, name these large-scale vocal works, such as Handel's Messiah. And that is an oratorio. Toss-up number 10. In this opera, 2 servants are given medicine that makes one of them sneeze continuously and makes the other yawn non-stop. One character boasts that everyone asks for me, everyone wants me, before telling himself, you'll never lack for luck, in an aria from this opera. In this opera, a character disguises himself as the student Lindoro to try and marry his love, which he ultimately does after bribing Don Basilio, the music teacher. The title character of this opera sings the aria Largo al Factotum, and later appears in a Mozart opera. For 10 points, name this opera composed by Gioacchino Rossini, whose title character Figaro helps Count Almaviva win Rosina. And that is The Barber of Seville. Toss-up 11. Franz Liszt created 6 piano etudes based on the works by this man, including La Campanella. This man commissioned Berlioz's Harold in Italy, but refused to play it because there were too many rests. His 24th Caprice in A minor served as the basis for both Brahms's books of variations named after this man and Rachmaninoff's Rhapsody on a theme of this man. This man's ability was later attributed to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which increases joint flexibility, rather than a deal with the devil. For 10 points, name this legendary 19th century Italian violin virtuoso. And that is Paganini. Toss-up 12. One part of this work features 11 measures of eighth notes before the soloist plays a series of C minor 32nd note arpeggios. Another section features repeated trills starting with B among the soloists and the principal violins before returning to the E major theme. The violins in this series play high pizzicato in its final section, depicting a cold rain, while earlier lightning and thunder are depicted in the section Storm. Its composer included this collection in his The Contest Between Harmony and Invention. For 10 points, name this set of violin concerti by Antonio Vivaldi, which opens with spring and summer. And that is the Four Seasons. Toss-up number 13. The aria, Vendromi Intorno, is sung by the titular king of Crete in this man's opera, Idomeneo. Another of his operas contains the aria, Ho capito, signor C, and contains the character Leporello, the servant of a character who kills Donna Anna's father and is dragged to hell at the end of the opera. This man composed the Queen of the Night aria for a well-known piece, and yet another opera with music composed by him, Ferrando and Guglielmo, tries to seduce each other's wives. That opera is Così fan tutte. For 10 points, name this Australian composer of the operas Don Giovanni and the Magic Flute. And that is Mozart. Toss-up number 14. Apart from the introduction, Michael Haydn was the true composer of a piece erroneously labeled as one of these works. The Mannheim Rocket begins the final section of one of these works, whose first movement contains a 16th eighth note motif. The last of these pieces contains a 5-voice fugato in its finale, and received its mythological nickname from Johann Peter Salomon. The Great G minor and 40th of these works is one of only 2 in a minor key. For 10 points, name these orchestral works by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart that include Jupiter. And those are Mozart symphonies. Toss-up number 15. Benedetto Marcello's Il Teatro alla Moda was published under a pseudonym constructed from this composer's name. This man composed a set of violin concertos named after a lyre like citra. This man also composed concerto collections titled La Stravaganza and L'Estro Armonico. This composer of a concerto for the mandolin wrote an oratorio in which Holofernes is beheaded. That is Juditha Triumphans. The contest between harmony and invention includes his most well-known work, a set of 4 violin concerti. For 10 points, identify this man, known as the Red Priest, the composer of the concerti Spring, Summer, Autumn, and Winter, to make up his 4 seasons. And that is Vivaldi. Toss-up 16. E.T.A. Hoffmann, who popularized this symphony, wrote that it sweeps the listener into the realm of the infinite. The exposition of the first movement of Brahms' First Symphony, which is in the same key, quotes this symphony's opening motif. A timpani roll links this symphony's third movement to its fourth movement, which is in its C major, even though this symphony is in the parallel key, C minor. Its long finale ends with 29 bars of C major chords. Fate Knocking at the Door is the name given to a motif from this symphony, which precedes its composer's Pastoral Symphony. For 10 points, name this symphony by Ludwig van Beethoven that features a short, long motif. Bum, 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 bum. And that would be, of course, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Toss-up number 17. He composed an opera that includes a Roman emperor ordering Seneca to commit suicide, and the empress plotting to kill the title mistress of the emperor. He composed an opera based on the Odyssey, entitled The Return of Ulysses to his homeland. One of his operas includes the aria Possente Spirito. His opera about Nero's court is the Coronation of Poppaea. His first opera was about a Greek musician who traveled to the underworld to rescue his dead wife. For 10 points, name this composer of Orfeo. And that is Monteverdi. Toss-up number 18. One part of this work includes an affettuoso movement between 2 allegro sections, while another feature a measure of chords of a Phrygian half-cadence following a violin cadenza. The second piece in this collection includes a difficult part for the clarino, and another features echo flutes played by recorders. The fifth piece features a virtuosic harpsichord cadenza and includes 2 lire da braccio and 2 viole la gamba, but no violins, including a piccolo violin, a natural trumpet, and natural horns. For 10 points, name this collection of 6 concerti grossi, named for a German city by J.S. Bach. And that is the Brandenburg Concerti. Toss-up 19. This man's 40th symphony is sometimes known as the Great G Minor Symphony. He included a 5-voice fugato at the end of the 4th movement of his Symphony No. 41, or Jupiter Symphony. This man's most commonly played piece is probably the Serenade, usually called Ein kleine Nachtmusik. He died at the age of 35, leaving his Requiem uncompleted. For 10 points, name this Austrian composer, known for his apocryphally rivalry with Salieri. And that is Mozart, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Toss-up 20. Robert Schumann wrote that all composers should make this work their daily bread. Many scholars contend that this work was composed to demonstrate the musical possibilities of a tuning system in which the octave is divided into 12 equal semitones. This work was the foundation of Nadia Boulanger's musical pedagogy and is often called the 48. It begins with a C major progression of simple arpeggios. This polytonal work consists of 2 books, the first composed in 1722 and the second in 1742, each of which contain 24 preludes and fugues in every key. For 10 points, name this collection of keyboard music by Johann Sebastian Bach. And that is the Well-Tempered Clavier. Toss-up 21. Among this composer's 5 cello sonatas is the Sonata for Cello and Piano in A major, which he dedicated to Ignaz Glückstein. One of his rondos is nicknamed A Rage Over a Lost Penny. He named one of his pieces Sonata Quasi una Fantasia, but it was given a more famous nickname by Ludwig Rellstab based on viewings of Lake Lucerne. His 5th and 6th symphonies were premiered on the same night, and his 5th has a famous short, long motif. His 3rd symphony originally was dedicated to Napoleon. Name this German composer of Eroica, Für Elise, and the Moonlight Sonata, who used Friedrich Schiller's Ode to Joy in his 9th Symphony. And that, of course, is Beethoven. Toss-up number 22. Note composer and type of piece required. The introduction to the 4th one of these compositions is an adagio with a mysterious B-flat minor chords before the allegro and fortissimo exposition. The final one of these works contains a symphony within a symphony, and in its last movement that incorporates themes from the first 3 movements, and 6 of these compositions contain sections such as Shepherd's Song. That work is the only one of these with 5 movements. The third of these compositions was originally dedicated to the memory of a great man, while the fifth one uses the memorable short, 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 long fate motif. For 10 points, name these 9 orchestral works, including Eroica and Pastoral, by the composer of the Moonlight Sonata and Für Elise. And these are Beethoven symphonies, composer and works. Toss-up 23. He wrote a work that includes F minor aria Sebaldina, and he composed 95 fugues based on a Magnificat. Along with Praise to the Lord in his Sanctuary, he composed 6 airs and variations on them in 6 different keys in his Hexachord of Apollo. His most famous work has a repeated basso continuo playing D, A, B, F sharp, G, D, G, A, and the other 3 voices enter on F sharp, descending the D major scale to A. That work is paired with a gig, or jig, and is misnamed Passacaglia. For 10 points, name this German composer of his namesake canon in D. And that is Pachelbel. Toss-up number 24. This opera contains a choral recitation of the hymn, O God, Look Down from Heaven. In this opera, 3 ladies padlock the mouth of a birdcatcher who is later given a set of bells that are used before the stuttered duet. In this work, the priest Sarastro requires a prince to complete several trials, and one soprano must hit several high Fs in the aria Der Holle Rache. This opera centers on a quest to rescue Pamina, whose power-seeking mother is the queen of the night. For 10 points, name this Wolfgang Mozart's Singspiel opera that sees Tamino play the title enchanted instrument, and that is the magic flute. Toss-up 25. Give this last name shared by 2 Italian composers. The father, Alessandro, created Neapolitan opera, while his son Domenico created 555 keyboard sonatas catalogued by Ralph Kirkpatrick. And they are, of course, the Scarlatti. Toss-up number 26. In this opera, Arnold sings the aria Asile Hereditaire, after looking at his old home and reminiscing of his father, who was killed by Austrians. This opera's French libretto was written by Etienne Dejoy and Hippolyte Bis, and the son of its protagonist sets his house on fire as a signal to begin a revolt. This opera's overture includes a Ranz de Vaches and a storm section, but is best known for the brass fanfare in its finale. The protagonist of this work is captured by the Austrian governor Gessler after refusing to bow to a hat, and that character later tells Jimmy, Suis immobile, or be still. For 10 points, name this Giacomo Rossini opera about a Swiss hero who shoots an apple off of his son's head. And that is, of course, William Tell. Toss-up number 27. Alternate editions of this work have been created by Duncan Druce and Franz Bayer. One movement of this work opens with a solo trombone playing a melody consisting of a B-flat arpeggio before a bass soloist sings the same melody. And one movement in this work, dotted rhythm melodic fragments in A minor, imitated between tenors and basses, describe the flames of hell. Those figures alternate with sopranos and altos singing C major melody beginning Vocame in its Confutatis movement. This work includes a double fugue in D minor for its Kyrie eleison movement. This work's Sanctus and Agnus Dei sections were written by the man who completed its Lacrimosa, Franz Sussmayer. For 10 points, name this unfinished final work by Mozart, a Requiem for the Dead, or a Mass for the Dead, and that is, of course, the Funeral Requiem. Toss-up number 28. One opera by this composer includes the Frost scene, in which Osmond demonstrates some magical powers. The music this composer wrote for the play Abdelazar was used by Benjamin Britten as the theme of The Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra. His most famous work was written for performance by a girls' boarding school, features a libretto by Nahum Tate, and contains the aria When I Am Laid in Earth. For 10 points, name this late 17th century English composer of the opera Dido and Aeneas. And that is Purcell, Henry Purcell. Toss-up 29. Most conductors of this symphony ignore the very fast indication of 116 whole notes per minute for the trio within its scherzo, which begins dotted quarter note high D, eighth note low D, quarter note low D for strings, and again for strings, but on A, then again for the timpani. The 1951 reopening of the Beirut Festival began with this symphony, followed by Parsifal. When this piece premiered along with most of the Missa Solemnis in Vienna in 1824, Caroline Unger pointed its composer towards the cheering audience. Leonard Bernstein conducted this piece after the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, substituting Freiheit for the German word for freedom in Freude. Chorale is the nickname of, for 10 points, what final Beethoven symphony? And that is, of course, Beethoven's Ninth. Toss-up number 30. This composer collaborated with the poet Calzabigi on works like Paride ed Elena and Don Juan, and began his career with the opera Artaserse. He reused music from his ballet Semiramis in an opera set to Nicolas Francois Gilliard's first libretto, which itself was an adaptation of a Euripides play. Another of this man's works includes the mournful aria Che Faro and the ballet The Dance of the Blessed Spirits. He is most famous for that opera, which was parodied by Offenbach and ends with Amore reuniting the two title characters, even after one sends the other back to Hades by turning to look at her. For 10 points, name this composer of reform operas like Iphigenie in Tauride and Orfeo ed Eurydice. And I think that is Gluck. Hopefully I'm right on that. Toss-up number 31. One of these works by this composer contains a set of variations on La Gentille et Jejune Lisette and was nicknamed for Marie Antoinette. One of them opens with a military fanfare for its unusually large horn section and is called Horn Signal. Another of these works by this composer replaces the oboes and two English horns and is nicknamed The Philosopher. A Sturm und Drang in 1 F sharp minor concludes with the musicians gradually leaving the stage. Another of these works by this man is nicknamed for an unexpected fortissimo G major chord in its second movement and is a part of a set of 12 nicknamed London. For 10 points, name these 104 orchestral works of an Austrian composer, which include ones nicknamed Farewell and Surprise. And those are symphonies of Haydn symphonies. Toss-up 32. In one opera by this composer, one character keeps interrupting her own song about Kypris during a lesson, angering the Marquise in the trio Les Jours naissent dans les bocages. That opera by him ends with the patriotic Salute à la France. In one opera by him, a character imagines a fountain's waters turning blood red in Regnava nel Silenzio. In one opera by him, Tonio hits 9 high C's in the aria Ah, mes amis. In another opera by him, the interruption of the singing of a marriage contract leads to a grand sextet, and the title character murders Arturo Bucklaw and imagines a life with Ingardo in Il Dolce Suono during her mad scene. For 10 points, name this bel canto composer of La Fille du Regiment and Lucia di Lammermoor. And that is Donizetti. Toss-up 13. The cadenza from this composition's third movement is quoted in the fourth measure of melody in Chopin's Fantasie Impromptu. This work's Adagio Sostenuto first movement contains the instruction for the sustain pedal to be held down continuously during its... Well, that didn't work out. I will finish. Held down continuously in its duration and was dedicated to the composer's pupil, Countess Julie Guicciardi. This C-sharp minor piece is its composer's 14th in a genre he heavily innovated. Originally called Quasi una Fantasia, it was nicknamed by Ludwig Rellstab due to its evocation of Lake Lucerne at night. For 10 points, name this piano piece by Ludwig van Beethoven. And with a bang, we end with Moonlight Sonata. Good luck. Keep studying.